welcome to episode 32 of Star Wars Tabletop Gaming. On today's episode, we're going to be discussing the recent previews we got for our emplacement troopers for both the Rebels and the Imperials. On the Rebel side, we have the 1.4 FD laser cannon team. What a catchy name that is. And on the Imperial side, we have the E-Web Heavy Blaster team. Now, of course, both of these are extremely iconic units. Very happy to see them. They will add amazing character to certain boards and look slightly strange on other boards, but we'll be able to have color schemes and conversions that work around that, and we'll talk about that a little later. So, in today's episode, I want to talk about the units themselves, the cards, go through the models. I want to go through the gameplay, the weaknesses, the strengths, their power versus existing units. I want to talk about what they do for each of the different factions and what they bring to the table. And then I want to talk about the upgrades that we've seen as well, because of course those are generic and can go on other units besides just the emplacements. So we'll stick with the Rebels first, and we'll do the Imperials second. So if you're only an Imperial player, do not skip any of this video. It's extremely imperative, and you need to know how to fight against the Rebels and what they bring into the table. So don't even think about skipping it. All right, so Rebels, the 1.4 FD laser cannon team unit expansion. What a mouthful. The quote is, "Send all troops in Sector 12 to the South Slope." Oh, Leia, you're inspiring. Let's look at what the laser cannon can do. So the previews have nice big pictures of the cards, which is nice. We're not having to squint like we did with the Boba Fett expansion preview, for example. So let's have a look. I don't even want to say the title again. Let's call it the laser cannon team. It is 70 points. Not too expensive, which is nice. It has the keywords full pivot, which we know what that does. It means you can pivot up to 360, which is so much more useful than 180. It has the sentinel keyword, which I don't think we've seen before. Your standby range is increased to 1 to 3. Fantastic. That is really nice, because standby right now is kind of rubbish, and this will really help it. But we'll talk about that a little later on. It is stationary, and this is its biggest weakness, but let's not get into that yet. It counts as 1 miniature. It has 6 health. It has 2 courage, which I really like. 2 courage is really big, people. 1 courage on troopers is just harsh. It means if your leader's not around, or if they're not within the command range of your commander, they're running at 2 suppression tokens, which is just abysmal and so easy for the enemy to put on. So I really like to see 2 courage. In regards to running away, we can assume this model will not run away because it's stationary, and it will simply lose its activation. That's my assumption, and I'm sure FFG will clarify that in the far future when this finally comes out, which we don't actually have to wait for that long. Q3 is what it says at the bottom of the article. But I digress. Let's go back to the card. So, Courage 2, really nice. It has a white defense dice, as expected. It has a surge to hit and a defensive surge, which is very nice. Double surge is fantastic. The only unit I think at the moment who has that double surge is the speeder bike. I could be wrong, but let's just throw huge statements out there, and I always really appreciate the speeder bike because of it. It just really increases the usefulness of your dice and makes a big impact, especially when you're firing black dice. So the main weapon on this laser cannon is the laser cannon itself. It is range 1 to 4, keywords impact 2. Very nice. Fixed front, and it has 5 black dice. Now, we know the 5 black dice is great. ATRTs with rotary cannons are extremely popular, and this weapon is, and how much does that cost? Let's see, I think that's 85 points for an ATRT with rotary blaster. This thing's 15 points less. Its weapon's got an extra range on it, and it's got impact too. It's so much better. It doesn't have armor, so it's not as survivable as your ATRT, and of course it has a courage value where the ATRT cares not for courage. Other weapons it has is the DH-17 blaster pistol. I'm kind of all over the place. I'm going to do unit comparisons later, so wait out for that ATRT full comparison. So yeah, it has DH-17 blaster pistols, 2 of them, hence the 4 white dice, which is, it's not terrible. You probably don't want to pay 70 points for 4 white dice, but if the enemy does try and sneak around you, you're not utterly defenseless. And unarmed, it has 2 black dice. So if they run in there, your little dudes drop the cannon and they get into their fisticuffs. That's just fine. So that is the laser cannon. It's pretty fantastic as stats go. If we ignore the stationary keyword, this model would be utterly broken. It would be just so powerful. That weapon, Impact 2, for the cost that we're paying for this. So of course we have to compare it to troopers, right? No, we won't get into that yet. So that's the card. That's the card. Let's look at the model. The model is really sweet. So of course we're looking at the Hoth. Looking at Hoth. We're on Hoth, and these are those cool little satellite dish thingy lasers that shoot awesome green beams of energy, I think, at the oncoming kind of ATSTs, troopers, and AT-ATs, and pretty much are ineffectual in the movie, but they're going to be bulk effectual in your games. And I just really like what's happening on the miniature. It's just that kind of old school sci-fi Star Wars theme, straight from the movies, obviously, and we get echo-based troopers. So this is what I'm really excited about. When I saw snow troopers first up, and we didn't yet know what the rebels were going to be, I was convinced that we were going to get echo-based troopers, because why wouldn't they, right? Snow versus snow, it makes sense. Well, we didn't. We got fleet troopers, which, look, they're lovely. They are classic 70s sci-fi, and I love them. But I just really wanted echo-based troopers. And now we have them in this very specialized support role where you only get two of them, which are now mixed in with the rest of your rebel and fleet troopers, and will look kind of strange. Depending on how you paint them, I guess. So I'm going for a forest-themed rebel army. So I'm super just going to paint these echo-based guys up in a forest theme, and they're just extra padded up for going in the forest. I don't know, you can have cold forests, right? And these guys, because they're not running around, they're standing still, they've got extra warm headgear on. Sounds legit to me. What I'd love to do is use these echo-based models that come with this kit, the laser cannon, and put them into their own core unit. Now, I'd love to have a full army of echo-based troopers, but let's see, we're talking at least 4 troopers too. We're looking at 6 laser cannon kits. And I'm probably just not going to buy that many, so I can get some minimum rebel trooper echo-based stand-in models. But such is life. So yeah, so they're going to look kind of strange. Look, if you really don't want that echo-based kind of models coming through into your army because you think it's going to throw off your theme, just grab some basic rebel troopers and chuck them on. Convert these guys out. Just use the arms. No one's going to notice, and have these guys as rebel troopers arming your laser cannon. But personally, I love the echo-based models. I really hope in the future we get a echo-based core unit so that I can theme an army specifically towards them, because the snow troopers get to do it, which we'll talk about soon. So let's see gameplay. Let's talk about the weaknesses first and get the trash out of the way. So the main weakness, of course, of this unit is that it is stationary. And this is a significant weakness. I'm not sure, but it may make it unplayable. And only a whole lot of testing and a whole lot of gameplay will let us know. Not being able to move, of course, leaves you stuck in your deployment zone, which means you cannot capture objectives ever, I believe, as per the way all the missions are currently set out. So these are, let's talk about that quickly. So they're emplacement troopers is the text that we have for these in regards to what kind of units they are. Now, I'm going to make a leap of assumption right here and say that means that these units can capture objectives. The reason I say that is because we have repulsor and ground vehicles in regards to your ATST, ATRTs, and your air speeders. So we know that and they still count as vehicles, right? So we know that putting an extra little word in front of either vehicle at the moment, or maybe trooper with these ones here, means they actually count as that type of unit, but with some extra special rules. Now, emplacement as a word, I don't want to call it a keyword because it's not, may mean that these guys, specifically in some rules references we get later on, may not be able to capture objectives. But I'm going to assume for now that they can. But of course, the laser cannon team, because it's stationary, will never be able to, not as the missions currently are. And that is a huge weakness, to have this kind of fleshy trooper unit that's sitting around, doesn't have armor, but still is not going to be able to capture objectives because it just can't move outside of your deployment zone. The other weakness, of course, is that your opponent can play around it. When you've got a unit that can only stay still, and sure, it can turn around, but it's generally looking down kind of one avenue of approach down the board, and if there's some line of sight blocking terrain around the place, which there damn well should be, it's really going to limit this cannon team's kind of impact on the game, its potential, because that ATST that the opponent's walking down the table could just, well, it creates a threat range, doesn't it? So it means that opponent's going to have to hold that ATST back. And thank goodness it's range 4. But so now that's the weakness. Can't move. That's going to impact what it can do in the game and capturing objectives. But let's talk about its strengths. So while it can't move, what it can do is utterly shut down lanes of movements and really threaten objectives sitting in that midfield that your opponent needs to move forward to capture. So your opponent can't simply stay at the back of the board and say, you know what, that cannon team, that laser cannon team can't move. I'm just going to sit right at the back and it can never shoot at me. Well, good for you. You're now not going to be capturing objectives and you're not going to be threatening my forces as well if I'm playing smartly. So I don't think stationary is as huge a weakness as it at first appears, because your opponent, if you place this thing smartly, your opponent is going to have to come towards you. Now, if you only place one of them, they can probably play around it. I mean, a 6x3 table is pretty big. If it's on one side, they'll just come down the other. But if you have two of them, shutting off kind of two key lanes of approach, two key objectives that the opponent needs to move towards, I think that's pretty powerful. And your opponent is going to have to deal with them. They're obviously going to be at the back. If they're shooting at your emplacement troopers, they're not shooting at your actual troopers who are moving forward and capturing objectives. So I think a lot of the time your emplacement troopers are going to go, unmolested. They're not going to be focused on, because your opponent won't have the potential to get to them while also dealing with your objective capturing troopers. So, strengths and weaknesses. The strength, of course, is also its epic weapon. It's just so good. Its double surges, also fantastic. The Sentinel range 1 to 3 is great. So, even if your opponent, let's say you have to pick from the pile because you don't want to give this thing an order because you're putting your orders elsewhere, and your laser cannon team comes up second and there's nothing to shoot at. That sucks. So, you give a standby token. And now, for the rest of that turn, if your opponent moves within range 3, which is really big, of this laser cannon team, you're going to get to shoot at it. Or if your opponent does something within range 1 to 3, you're going to get to shoot at it. So that's really nice. I really like the Sentinel keyword, and hopefully we can see that on some other things in the future to make standby more relevant in this game, because I just never find myself taking that action. Power versus existing units. So what we have to compare the laser cannon team to are the rebel trooper unit, obviously, and the ATRT, probably with rotary cannon, or laser cannon, really, because it's range 1 to 4, right? So compared to a trooper unit, this thing can't move, obviously, which is its big weakness. Its weapon, obviously more powerful, so you've got of the same points, I guess, for a rebel trooper unit. You're looking at 72 points. They've got, the 5 dudes plus the Z6. So they've got the same amount of black dice plus 6 white dice. So they're firing a lot more dice, right? But they don't have the impact 2 keyword to start with, which is huge. And they don't have range 1 to 4. It's only range 1 to 3. So I guess output, I'm going to say the laser cannon team is stronger with its weapon, simply because it has impact 2, which I think the rebels really need. They really need, especially at range, some more abilities to put down impact, because they don't have things as powerful as the ATST with its main cannon, which is just a bit, and the speeder bikes as well with their weapons, which impact 2 for a speeder bike unit when firing both of its weapons. So really cool. The laser cannon team also does not lose effectiveness as you lose models, and that's the same for both the emplacements. At wounds, I should say. So even when your emplacement trooper is down to 1 wound, you're still firing those 5 black dice, which is really nice. So keep that in mind. That's a huge bonus. It's almost like a vehicle in that sense compared to other trooper units. The other thing we should compare it to is the ATRT with rotary cannon, or laser cannon. So same amount of dice as rotary cannon, obviously, longer range, same range as the laser cannon, but 5 black dice with surges to hit. Is that better than the laser cannons? Red dice. Maybe they're about the same. Impact 2 instead of impact 3. Let's say it's about equal. But of course, the ATRT can move, and that's what it keeps coming down to. But let's not dwell on that. It doesn't have armor, so it's obviously not as protected as the ATRT. But the ATRT with rotary, for instance, is 15 points more expensive, or a full 20 points more expensive with the laser cannon. So this thing's a lot cheaper, but it does take up, obviously, the same slot as the ATRT. And I think that's going to be a really hard choice for people to make, because the ATRT is pretty much the most flexible and powerful unit for the rebels. What does this do for the rebels then? If it's competing with the ATRT, it's not doing what you need to do in regards to capturing objectives. What does it bring to the rebels? And the main thing that it brings is that range 4 laser cannon. Rebels really lack a range 4 option at the moment. The only one they have, in fact, is the laser cannon on the AT-RT. So having a second range 4 option is really nice, and it brings them kind of on par with the Imperials, who currently have a pretty significant range overmatch when it comes to that kind of thing. So that's really nice. I think the Rebels really needed this unit. Will stationary make it not as powerful? Maybe. Will it still be a whole bunch of fun in casual games and just throwdowns with your mates? You bet. I can't wait to get this model on the table. I think it's a gorgeous model. It's a really cool idea. It's really left field, right? I personally did not expect them to just have emplacements. It's not the obvious go-to when you think about what you would put on a tabletop game. So cool idea. I really like the 1.4 FD laser cannon team. Will I use it in competitive matches? We'll have to wait and see. So, that is the Rebels. This video was sponsored by Gatekeeper Games, your key to gaming unplugged, a tabletop store offering a friendly atmosphere for people to buy and play their games in the north of Fitzroy.